It's crazy because when you were an escaped fugitive. I mean, essentially you were, but like they're literally kicking down your door like you murdered like 10 people. And like that they were just gonna be in a gun battle with you. And like you're escaped fugitive over a misdemeanor. Like it's insane to think the amount of
well, you never know the limits that people will go to stay free.
I guess you're right.
Go in with that idea because I know if it's me, I ain't going back to that.
I'm taking one of y'all with me. You like the movies, like they say in the movies. You be like, and then they don't take nobody and they get killed in the movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Go out there getting shot.
Welcome to the Pardon Me podcast, where every episode is designed to bring guests into your living room, car, or wherever you podcast at to share their stories of perseverance and success. The guests of the Pardon Me podcast have successfully served their time in prison, and they may have received a gubernatorial or presidential pardon, exemplifying the success they've had since incarceration. Our goal here at the Pardon Me podcast is to continually humanize individuals who serve their time in prison and to make sure that the stories that they have are told to encourage others to continue to be successful when they get out of prison as well. Before we begin on the Pardon Me podcast, I always want to give a shout out to our fantastic sponsor, Be Clear Water.
All know and love our premier alkaline water that's wrapped in sustainable packaging. Well, welcome the new kids on the block. Our watermelon mint and elderberry lemonade are packed with vitamins. It's great tasting and refreshing without the artificial flavors and colors. Life's confusing enough. Let's be clear.
Be Clear Water. Water from the heavens. Man, today I got the homie.
Wait.
Oh, what?
Hydrate yourself.
There it is. Hydrate yourself. Shout out to Be Clear Water for being a sponsor of the Pardon Me podcast and the Pardon Me brand.
I swear, every time I take a sip, I just keep on drinking it. It's not like part of the advertisement. It's not part of the pitch. It's that good.
It really is that good. Even at room temperature is fantastic.
This is room temperature?
This is room temperature.
Wow.
It feels cold.
It's cold.
Yeah, it's room temperature.
Insulated can.
Yes.
All right, my bad.
Man, it's all good. Welcome to the Pardon Me podcast, where you got your host, Joshua Johnson, otherwise known as Former Inmate number 305178. I always got the homie Can Beats, the teacher, and his Can Beats, throw out your inmate number over there, my brother.
0.
Non-inmate 0.
I am non-inmate 0. Number 0. Don't plan on it, and got my car registered the other day to make sure I do not actually join the inhabitants of jail. Dude, you know they would have like $265.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, you know this.
Switching transferring the title and the plates over to another car.
Oh yeah, man.
$265.
They gonna get their money up out you, man. That's just how it is, man. They're gonna get their money up out you.
Well, I'm still inmate 0 because of that.
Well, that's a good thing, man. And as you all know that watch the Pardon Me podcast, you know that Can Beats continues to profess he's never going to go to prison, and we're going to support those efforts by making sure he's here every week to record the Pardon Me podcast.
I wasn't here last week, but it wasn't because I was incarcerated.
That's good, man. I'm glad. I'm glad we didn't have to come bail you out.
No collect calls. Do they still have collect calls?
They still do have collect calls. Yes, they do.
All right. See, that's how much I know.
Yeah, they have this. So you'd have to have somebody answer your call, just so you know.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if me or Poindexter are gonna answer your call.
All right. Like, hey Josh, pick up. You have a call from
an inmate at the Milwaukee County Jail.
Hey Josh, tell me, it's me, Tommy. Pick up.
Hey, this is always great conversation, but we're really happy today to have our guest, Crystal Keller, joining the Pardon Me podcast. Welcome to the Pardon Me podcast, Crystal.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Oh, it's our honor to have you here as well. You are the second woman who has received a pardon to join our show. The first from Wisconsin, but the second woman to join our show, and actually the first who's gotten a gubernatorial pardon. Because if you remember from episode 7, Sarita had a presidential pardon. So this would be really interesting to have a conversation with you today about receiving your governor's pardon here in Wisconsin. We always kick the show off with Can Beats over in the Pardon Me corner, reading your pardon proclamation. So I'm going to turn the show over to him.
Thank you, Joshua. No. as Josh said, we start off every show by reading the proclamation that was declared as the pardon from the governor. And Crystal's reads as, whereas Crystal H. Keller was convicted on February 25th, 2010 of one count of escape criminal arrest in violation of section 946.42 of the Wisconsin statutes, Waukesha County case number 2009 CF1166, and on the same day was sentenced to 101 days in confinement. 101 days. This is the relevance of the one day.
Over 100.
It has to be over 100.
That's just how it ended up.
All right. Well, we're glad that you're here. Thank you for joining us. And
Thank
it's
you.
an honor to have another woman on our show to actually talk about their experience.
Definitely is, and we always kick the show off with the first question after we read after Cam Beats reads the proclamation. He has one question that helps him really identify and kind of kick the show in the direction to understand, for our listeners to understand where folks are at, where their minds were when they were released from prison. So I'll turn it over to Pardon to ask that, to Cam Beats to ask that question.
So on the 101st day of your incarceration, you were released. When you were released, what was the first item that you purchased?
Yeah, everyone thinks about what am I going to do when I get out, like eat or go see or whatever. I wanted a book and chocolate and coffee, so I went to Barnes and Noble because they have all of them.
They have all three. Absolutely.
Godiva chocolate, or as my daughter will say, Godiva chocolate, right? And Starbucks, which I don't go to anymore. I don't support them anymore, but yeah.
Thank
and I
you.
got a
I don't
journal. Yeah.
Well, there might be a potential sponsor.
Well, until they fully unionize them, maybe.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. No,
Hey, the caramel frappuccino is on hit. I ain't gonna lie.
Was it regular coffee? Was it just like a fufu coffee?
It was probably one of those back then. I didn't drink like straight coffee like I do now.
Okay.
Hardened now.
The brick and mortar brought you some.
Probably working for the government.
There you go. There we go.
Well, it's interesting because you said you had three things that you bought, and when we asked people, there's been people who talked about Reese's cups. Somebody bought some Jordans. Somebody bought some equipment for their restaurant, and I think we asked that question because we really want to give the listeners an idea of when people get released from prison, like what matters to them. It's insignificant to the general population to go buy some coffee, chocolate, and a book. It's very insignificant, but to a person who's released from prison, it's very significant many times because it's things that we didn't have or have access to while we were in prison. Mm-hmm. So we appreciate that answer. And that's an interesting answer. It's something that for you, it dictated, like that was the first thing that you were thinking about as soon as you walked out the door.
And 101 days, although it's way more days than I ever want to spend anywhere out of my house, it's in the context of all our guests, that's probably the shortest stint.
It has, yes.
So as you were there, did it feel like 101 days or was it felt like longer?
Well, it was kind of rough because the original case that I had, which was a misdemeanor, I got revoked off of that, and I quote unquote escaped. That's what my felony conviction.
Yeah, I want to get to that because it sounds really hard.
And so I was sitting in county jail waiting for my case to go through the system, and I had a public defender for the felony case, and I was trying to fire her because I already knew. I should say this too. My misdemeanor case was on appeal, going to appellate court, which is a long process. And my attorney for that was like, they're just going to give you basically double what your original sentence was. So I was trying to fire my attorney that was representing me on the felony case because she was just not very good, not very helpful, which drives my passion actually for helping people because I've been there, right? But it's a long time when you don't have a countdown date. My count was always next court date.
Well, you didn't know when it was.
I got time served, and that's that's the 101 days.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Gotcha. And it took longer too, because okay, I'm trying to have a bail review, or I'm trying to have, fire my attorney and just represent myself, because they weren't going to budge on this escape charge. So I'm like, whatever. But, I had to have a separate hearing for that. And, her calendar. She can't make it at the next date they proposed. I got to wait a whole nother month just to fire her.
So Is this a perfect time to okay? So the escape charge. So what?
Can Beast likes to get right to it. You know, he wants to get right to the criminal activity.
Not even real escape. Like I didn't dig a tunnel or knock out. I didn't knock out like a guard and throw on their suit and hop a fence.
Take a little piece of dirt out of
right.
Like in Shawshank, digging space.
Yeah, that didn't happen. No, I was at Huber. So Huber is work release jail. It's called different things in different areas, but I was at Huber and it's actually messed up. Like I said, my case was on appeal and I actually had to revoke myself because they said if I tried to fight this being revoked, I would have sat in jail longer than it would have been to just revoke myself and serve the time at Huber.
And revoke means what? Like
when you're on paper for probation or parole, if they think that you're violating terms of your probation and parole, they could put you on a hold and just have you sit in jail like an undeterminate amount of time. Or if they think it's bad enough, they'll take you off paper and now you got to go back and serve time behind jail again.
Gotcha. Okay.
So my probation officer basically made me revoke myself, right? So my sentence on revocation for my misdemeanor case, my original one from 2008, was to go to Huber, the work release jail. And I shouldn't have been there. That's a whole different story. My original case was, like I said, on appeal for a reason. But I wanted to go see my stepmother who was in the hospital at a nearby hospital at the time. And I filled out a pass request because work release jail is pretty flexible, right? Like you go to work or you could take care of family or you could go to the Walgreens down the street to get hygiene products, right? You just fill out a pass request. She was in a coma in the ICU at a nearby hospital. And when I found out, I filled out a pass request and I waited 3 days. And after the third day of coming back and checking in from work and saying, what's up with my pass request? They said it's still pending. So I'm basically like, well, F that. And I walked out. That's escape. And that's a felony. And they don't care if my original case that was on appeal, waiting to go through the system, takes about a year. They wouldn't even hold open this felony escape charge to see what happened on my original case. Because Waukesha.
Hey, you know,
that's the answer. That's Waukesha.
Waukesha, for real.
You know whose story this is reminiscent of? Canned Joe.
Yeah.
Remember, Joe ended up going to jail and he had bail jumping on a case that ended up getting dropped. But the bail jumping charge stood and he ended up serving time in prison for bail jumping, which is the exact same thing as escape. They're a horse apiece.
It's different wording.
It's just different wording because he was on bail. So that was the big difference was he was on bail.
You have gone to the hospital on your way to Walgreens?
Well, I mean, I didn't fill out a pass for Walgreens either. But also, could I have just gone back? Yes.
Yeah.
Do you know how hard it is to turn yourself in or like schedule a court date to turn yourself in when you are innocent and say, okay, I'm going to go back to this jail that I'm not supposed to be at while my life is falling apart on the outside.
Right.
Just in those 101 days. It was rough.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think about that. When you leave out, it's not an impulse. It's more of I'm asking you all in 3 days now, you haven't responded. Like the emotions and everything, especially when it's something with a family member or something like that, those emotions take over. No one's thinking rationally. Like if I leave here, I'm going to get in trouble. You probably thought about that. Like, all right, well, there's a chance, but I think we talk about that on a lot of shows, like the mind, when you commit a crime, many times it's not, you think at that moment you're going to get caught. There's a reason why you're doing it.
I have an image of you like saying, oh man, F this, and just running and then like chasing you to the hospital.
No, I walked out of the doors. They check everyone in throughout the day.
Right.
So you're sitting in the lobby. I just, I sat back down after checking on my pass request and I texted a few friends. I was like, F this, I'm leaving. And I left. And I did not go back. But then the U.S. Marshals captured me at gunpoint a month later. That was kind of serious. And then I went to jail.
So I had this Lifetime movie scene in my head. I gotta get to the hospital.
Like,
I gotta go.
I mean,
and then it cuts.
Died though.
Well, then it cuts. Yeah. Well, I was gonna say you're thinking about that moment where it's like, F this, I'm up out of here, right?
Yeah.
And then it cuts to like you just getting up out of there, and the idea in my mind, so Cand has this Lifetime movie vision.
Her hands are in handcuffs, and she's got the striped shirt on. She's got her inmate number at the hospital. Like, I got it all. It's all
I have my regular clothes on. I wasn't checked in yet. Kind of.
But I think it underscores like when you put yourself in the system, when you get involved in the system, many things are just uncontrollable by us. And even in this instance, you were 100% fighting a case, but it didn't matter because anything that you did was going to be based off of the fact that you were already in trouble. And I think, as you said, your stepmother could have passed away. I'm taking it she didn't.
She didn't at the time. No.
Good. That's good. That's good to hear. But you think about that, right? You think about the fact, that emotion of like, I just want to go see, like, this is a sense of normalcy for me, and you all are taking your time in doing something that's normal. It's normal to give a pass. Like, you're talking about, like, you go to Walgreens or whatever, right? So it's normal to go down that path.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think about that? All right. So now, I'm gonna use Cam Beats' Lifetime movie. You're running down the street, you get away, like two cars crash into each other, you jump over one and you get away, and then they don't find you. And then the U.S. Marshal finds you a month later. How did all that go down? Was it like what we see on TV? Like, were you walking into stores with a hood on, so nobody could find you? And
it's hilarious. Well, so I tried to get a job right away, and then someone was like, "Oh, one of the people involved in my original case goes to that place where you got a job, so you probably shouldn't work there." And I was like, "Yeah, that's true. I don't want to be taken out of work in handcuffs." So no, I didn't go to my house because they might look for me there.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's probably the first place they look.
House, and he lived. So I'm from Milwaukee, but I lived in Waukesha at the time, and my dad lived in Milwaukee. Okay, so I'm at my dad's house. And we'll just say he didn't know maybe that he was harboring a fugitive. Statute of limitations probably ran out on that by now. But anyways,
what are you doing?
He lived in an upper duplex, so a second floor, right? And I'm just waiting. I'm super naive about the legal system too at the time. I'm in my 20s, so I think like my appeal is going to be coming around soon anyway, right? No, it was probably a good year away still. But I wanted to go to the museum. I love the museum. I still have a membership over 10 years now at the museum. And I was like, okay, should I go to the museum today? Because it's boring. I can't go anywhere, right? I don't want to have.
You're like an escaped fugitive. Yeah.
Looking out the window.
And so I was like, all right, I didn't go to the museum that day. And I wonder what would have happened if I had. But I hear boom, 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 boom at the door downstairs. And I'm not answering the door, but I look out and I see there's cops. And they're like, Crystal! And they're like knocking and banging on the door. And the neighbor's dog downstairs is barking. And my dad was at work. So thankfully it wasn't when he was there. And I'm not going to answer the door because I'm like, well, they have to have a warrant. And I don't know why I didn't think that they would. Mm-hmm. And I text a bunch of my friends and my dad. I was like, oh my God, the cops are here. And because
he didn't know why you were there, I'm sure he was like,
yeah, why would the cops be there?
Yeah, he's like, what are they here for?
And one of my friends called me right away. They're like, what's going on? I was like, I don't know. They keep banging. And they're like, Crystal. And I'm not answering the door. I don't want to go to jail. And so then all of a sudden I hear my name very clearly. Crystal clearly.
But
I'm like, they are in this house right now. How did they get in? Because I'm on the second floor. And they came in off the back balcony and broke in. And I still thought it was cops. I didn't realize it was U.S. Marshals. Okay. In the city of Milwaukee, like they don't have other things to do. I don't know.
Hey,
I guess that was
catching fugitives.
Yeah, escapee. And I heard the dude running all the way towards the front where I was in the living room, but I was like off to the side. And he ran down the stairs to let everyone else in. So when he ran down the stairs, I went to the bathroom and hid behind the shower curtains. Like they wouldn't check. And they're like breaking closets looking for me, right? Shouting my name all over. Yes. And then finally one of the marshals at gunpoint pulls the shower curtain and was like, "Get out of there. What are you doing? Taking a green shower, trying to save water?" I was like, "Oh my gosh."
Oh, you got
So,
jokes.
Yeah, you got
Yeah.
jokes with a gun pointed at me.
Yeah, right. Ha ha.
Uh,
Thanks for not shooting.
it's
Yeah.
crazy because when you were an escaped fugitive. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, essentially you were,
Right.
but like they're literally kicking down your door like you murdered like 10 people. And like
Right.
that they were just gonna be in a gun battle with you. And like you're escaped fugitive over a misdemeanor. Like it's
Yeah.
insane to think the amount of
Disorderly conduct.
Well, you never know the limits that people will go to stay free.
I guess
You gotta
you're
gotta
right.
go in with that idea because I know if it's me, I ain't going back to that.
I'm taking one of y'all with me. Like the movies, like they say in the movies. You be like, and then they don't take nobody and they get killed in the movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Go out there and get shot.
Right. No, it's crazy to think about they kick the door down, right? So they kick the door down, they arrest you. Now, that process, right? You get arrested. What's going through your mind at this time now? Because I know you have to be thinking like, this is some bullshit. Like,
Yeah.
it's not that serious for what I did. I mean, obviously you escaped, but it's like, now what? Like, what's going through your mind at that point?
Well, I knew I'd be going to real jail and not just Huber. I mean, I had been in and out a couple
Right.
times, like through the whole initial process, but I was like, thank you for not taking me back to downtown Milwaukee and booking me there and taking me right out to Waukesha, which I called the resort. It was very easy compared to Milwaukee jails to serve time there.
I would imagine. The federal jail's out there too. So yeah, it's a lot easier.
What's up with the Milwaukee jail?
It's terrible. And so is the Community Reintegration Center.
Okay.
Which I was there today.
Yeah.
No offense to them, but the housing there sucks
Mhm.
as an inmate.
Yeah, and I think that's when you think about the jails and when you think about like Milwaukee County Jail, I can think about when I was there. I mean, it's been 30 years. But there's like 100 people in the pod. So you're in a room. You're in a room. Back then, it was only built for single cells, so single rooms, but we were double. So one of us was on the floor and one was on the bed.
Mhm.
And when you think about the bed, it's just a hard slab piece of concrete, and then your mattress lays on there. So it's tough, man. You're not breathing any outside air. You're isolated. You don't have windows. You can't see anything. You're just in a space
With a whole bunch of other people.
with a whole bunch of other people. Like you
Mhm.
can go out in the gym. The gym is in between the pods, and it has if it's warm out, like it have the little gate open. You can't see anything, but you can at least hear outside and feel the fresh air if you could feel the fresh air. But yeah, it's just a totally different atmosphere.
Oh, okay.
So now I know, right? So now as you're thinking about, all right, you're arrested, you go back to real jail. What's going on now? What's the process now of when you're going to court? Let's kind of walk through that process. What were you doing when you went to court, and then how? Like, let's talk and lead that up to when you got out.
All right. So yeah, court was a big process, right? It takes a while. When I was transitioning from my original case to the misdemeanor to the felony case, I was also going through divorce at the same time. It was heavily related to my very bad divorce. That's why I have a case.
Okay.
But anyways, I of course went back to my maiden name legally, right? My license and my social security card are all switched back. And the jail, though, refused to book me under my correct legal name. And I'm there because of my now ex-husband. So they're calling me his last name, but taking me to court where they're addressing me correctly. And I finally started telling the jail, you call me Hollingsworth one more time, I'm not even going to look at you. That's not my name. Stop calling me that. And I'm here because of him. Okay. It's like dramatic.
There's some trauma tied to this. I'm telling y'all to stop doing it.
Do not call me that. That is not my name. They return mail. They wouldn't let people see me. Stuff from my attorney even. Yeah. But, my main concern, because I knew from my other attorney that there was no way they're going to budge. Like they weren't going to drop this to a misdemeanor. And I was devastated when I went through the original case for the misdemeanor. Like, I'm not going to get a job anymore. I wanted to be a teacher. I had to drop out of college because of that, because all the stuff that was going on. But then I'm like, now I'm going to be released as a felon. right? And we all know that means
Mhm.
something in this country.
So that meant something to you while you were in the process.
Yeah.
You knew that was.
So
gonna
I
be
knew
there.
I was going to be released as a felon. And my main concern is, how am I going to get any kind of job?
Mhm.
And I was losing hope, because during that 101 days that I was in the real jail, I got evicted from my place. So now I have an eviction on my record. You know, I just got divorced. I lost custody. Well, technically joint legal custody, but my ex won primary placement of our son and got to move out of state with him.
Oh, wow.
And that was actually the whole reason why my criminal case came up. He wanted me to look bad. So in our divorce, he'd win placement. It worked.
He's a nice
And
guy.
I had 3 children. So I had children. I was actually a teenage mother. So I had 2 kids already from a previous relationship, and then a third with my now ex-husband. And all my kids got split up, and one of my children ended up in foster care. Just 101 days in jail, right?
Jeez.
Lost my car. Of course, I lost my job, right? All these things. And I'm like, what am I going to do when I get out? How am I going to have a professional job again?
Right.
And I had been a personal banker. I'd worked in tech support for years. So I already had some professional background, but I didn't think I'd be able to sustain myself anymore. Like, now I have to rebuild. I already did. I was in and out of foster care as a kid. I aged out at 18, you know. So I was a ward of the state as a minor. I was in juvie as a minor briefly while I was pregnant, while I was 16 and pregnant.
Wow.
Then I was in a group home for abused kids when I aged out at 18. And back then in the 90s, they didn't have resources for people that were aging out of the system.
I mean, it's tough now. They don't have a lot of resources.
I mean, they
now.
got more than they did.
They have more than they did, but
they were. I mean, that was even a title. That
it was like, oh, you 18,
Right.
good. See ya.
Yeah, especially with a baby. I had a 1-year-old at the time.
Well, they figured that you're an adult at this point. You can handle
Right. So I already had to rebuild my life before, you know, just turning 18, and now I'm 28. It's 10 years later, and I'm like, I got to do this all over again.
Oh, wow.
And fight the system, get my kid out, you know, foster care. It was rough, but I'm really glad, because there wasn't much to do. I don't read romance novels, and I guess because I'm a woman, they thought that's what they should bring on the library cart when they brought it over to the pod. Like, this is extra torture, okay? But I would go to the law library, and I read about the Wisconsin Fair Employment Law, and that's where I'm like, oh, well, it shouldn't be used against me in employment in this state unless it's substantially related. And
Very true.
And that gave me hope. That was the only thing I had.
You know, it's interesting, because some listeners who may be listening will be like, well, you know, you say that your life, you know, it went down, like you spiraled out because of like the system caused it. And I'm not saying it did, but I'm saying like what they hear, an individual may think that, but what they're not realizing, number one, the system is totally disproportionately horrible. And those aren't even the right words, but it is towards women. It's Sarita, one of our guests, Sarita, shared about like it's so bad for women who go to prison. But secondly, these are not things like your original case was a misdemeanor. Like, you are not a hardcore felon who's out here like just doing no craziness. Like, it was a misdemeanor that turned into an escape. Not making an excuse for the escape, but think about, I want the listeners, as they listen to this, think about someone who now didn't do 101 days, which is, you know, a little over 3 months.
Right.
Think about somebody who's doing years, right? The challenges that they face. And you, even at 101 days, faced all of these challenges that somebody faces that's done 10 years. Many times people think, well, just because you've done a lot of time, many years, that's why you're having to deal with this. No, 101 days, a little over 3 months, and you're having to deal with every one of these things that are now going to change your life.
When you are in those 3 months, which that's a lot that goes down in 3 months, like a lot of stuff. Like, so were you like getting like mail, or people were telling? How did you finding this stuff out, that this stuff was going on? Like,
You mean what?
with the eviction, the car,
Family or CCAP? Sometimes when my letters would go through, they'd send it to my former married name, you know, or phone calls.
So you were getting this stuff like day after day, like, Oh,
Yeah,
another
like
thing,
the
another
updates here
thing.
and there. Yeah. But and you can't do anything
Did you have a
about it.
breaking point at that point? When, like, after, what was the? I'm sure
I-
what was the breaking point of, like, oh, what the hell?
While I was incarcerated, what was really rough was getting a letter from my attorney for my original case. And she said, I think you have a good shot on this appeal, because she read everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you'll win on appeal. And I'm like, I'm fucking here and I'm not supposed to be. I'm in jail. One of my kids is in foster care.
Mhm.
My other kid just moved out of state.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. That had to be like, to know that you're now sitting in jail for something that is about to get tossed out. That there's a chance of being tossed out. I can't even imagine. Like, I'm serious. When I went to prison, I did what I did, right? I pulled a gun out, I robbed people. But I can't even imagine that feeling of, like, and I don't even want to call it like hopelessness, but you're like helpless.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you
Like,
can't do anything.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and there's nothing you can do to change it. Like, there's no rewind button. Like, oh, look, now I'm about to be, this case is going to be thrown out, and
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't matter. I knew it didn't matter. I ended up dropping my appeal because I'm like, well, now I have a felony that's not going to go anywhere. Why am I going to
Yeah.
waste my time now working on an appeal? I have to
Right.
rebuild my life. I don't have time to deal with all that.
So,
But what kept me kind of focused is I would write lists too, like, okay, career options or funny things like jokes,
Mhm.
right? And I would look back at that and I'm like, this is what I have to look at. And every day when it was dinner time, everyone would line up in my pod to the door, right? But like in a hurry, like they had somewhere to go. Or like it was hot. And I didn't. There was chairs stacked off to the side, and the COs were busy because they're passing out food through the little slot in our pod doors. So I would climb up the stacked up chairs, and I looked outside every day, and I was like, I'm gonna be back out soon.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that kept me going.
yeah.
Writing letters to my kids.
Mhm.
You know, I didn't
How
really.
old were your kids at this time?
They were like 4, 9, and 11.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So completely aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did that experience, like, shape your understanding and your feeling about the criminal justice system? Like, how did that?
That's an interesting question. I already knew growing up in the inner city, right? And growing up in the system and having gone to juvie, right? That it's a messed up system.
Yeah, I didn't know you had
already
that
knew
experience. So you already had that in your back of your
for
head
a few months. Yeah, when I was defending myself against my abusive mother.
Mhm.
But I'm the pregnant teen, even though I called for help.
Mm.
So I get arrested,
Wow.
But I was just like, I knew we had a messed up criminal justice system, or as I call it, the injustice system.
Mm-hmm.
But I had no idea what depth until I was in it. Like,
Mhm.
no one could have explained it to me where I would have totally understood.
Mhm.
With my original case, I had a paid attorney, right? I retained him for both cases, my criminal case and my divorce that were going on simultaneously. Which, by the way, that's not a good attorney. Like, what area of law do you do? You need specialties.
Hey, who was that?
I didn't know.
Hey, that was on Seinfeld. Jackie Childs, was that the
Yeah.
attorney? He did all kind of law.
Yeah.
He did every law there was.
You don't
It's like going to
specialize in anything.
Like going
then.
to the corner store. Like, we got everything.
Yeah.
We got tacos and we got taco meat.
Sure. Yeah. So, I'm sorry, I lost track of my train of thought. But
you were talking about your attorney who your
Oh,
Jackie Childs type attorney
yes.
who did
He
all
told
kind
me.
of law.
So he told me right before we were going into the courtroom for criminal court, in the hallway, that he doesn't go to trial. And this is a he said, she said misdemeanor criminal case. He doesn't go to trial. And if I don't take the offer, which is just now being told to me, he's going to withdraw as my attorney.
Wow.
And I'm like, my paid lawyer, while I'm a single parent of 2 kids, right? And then I have the third that I'm going through this family court divorce through. But I don't have any more money. Like, he's getting all my bonuses every quarter because I retained him for my criminal case and my family court case. And I'm like, what kind of fucking attorney is this? telling me right before I go into court that if I don't take the deal, he's going to withdraw. Like, I don't have money to go retain a whole new lawyer.
Wow, I didn't know the lawyers could do that.
I don't think they're supposed to.
Yeah, I've never heard that.
I
before,
told
so
the
that is
judge that.
insane.
I told the judge that. You can even see it on the CCAP, like court record
That is
events.
crazy.
The judge gave me time to talk to my lawyer out in the hallway. He called a few more cases. We went back into court, and of course, my lawyer didn't budge. And then the judge was like, well, I'll give you 30 days to try to find another attorney. And this is during the recession. Like, I was using the Bar Association website, reaching out to lawyers. No one was taking my case pro bono. So I went back a month later and waived all my rights.
Wow.
You know, I can't even
That's
imagine.
crazy.
Like, I just want to touch on that for a minute. Like, as a woman going through the criminal justice system, I don't think there's enough focus put on the challenges that you're faced. Not only a woman, a single mother at the time. Well, you were becoming a single mother because you were getting divorced. I don't think there's enough emphasis put on the fact that the things that are faced and the things that men face when they go through prison are totally different than what women face. And many times, it's, like you said, you were a mother, you had children, right? Many times we know men, they disconnect from the kids when they go to prison, but a woman, there's always that innate connection. And it's just, to me, it's your story is a story of like just unfortunate twists and turns. Like, no matter what, I don't care. Like, I'll be honest, I don't care that you escaped. Like, that's, to me, you escaped for a reason, but it's the system cares. And I think that's where the system is broken. Like, how do we change that? How do we fix that? How do we make sure individuals have the support they need? So even when your life is falling apart, how do we make sure that they have the support they need to move forward? I see, Ken, you had something to say over
No,
there.
I was going to say it's just not. It's so black. It's black and white. There's not a lot of context to it, because if you looked into it one step further, you know that, all right, she went to the hospital.
Right.
If you went to the hospital and came back, what would have been?
They probably wouldn't have charged me.
Okay.
But again, I was innocent. I was like, I'm not going to this damn place. My case is on appeal. Like, I'm not doing it.
It shouldn't have been as bad as it is because it was on appeal.
Yeah, but that doesn't matter. When you got a bad PO, you got a bad PO.
Yeah.
What can I say?
Well, so I want to, because we're going down. I love it. I love your story is so compelling. Like, and it shows, it underscores the fact that we talk about all the time, that you don't have to be someone who's done 20 years in prison to end up getting a pardon. So I want to talk about, all right, you got out, you if you could kind of, I don't want to say fast track through, but when you got out, you started looking for work, some of the things you did, and then what you did that led you up to getting a pardon. What made you want to get a pardon? Like, what made you want to do that? But bring me from when you got out of prison, like, and give some touch points in there, then leading up to the applying for a pardon.
Well, I did get a job like within a week of getting out, because I already had a pretty strong work history, and I was only locked up a few months, right? And got my kids back and all that stuff. So Scott Walker was our governor for quite a few years, and I was watching and listening and saw that he wasn't giving any pardon the whole time.
Our producer is putting his thumbs down and other fingers up.
The tall man. I saw it. And I had a lot of challenges. Though I did get a job right away, I just took like a for now job, right? Until I was looking for a better one.
Yeah.
So I went back into tech, which is where I had experience with telecom. And after a year, I went to go work for a payroll processing company. And it was a much better job. And like working in tech and telecom, sometimes I have to work nights and weekends. I wanted a standard Monday through Friday. And of course, I checked the box. Yeah, I have a felony conviction. And I wrote it down. And then I had a panel interview, like 5 or 6 people at the interview in person. And sometimes places wouldn't notice that. I think because I'm a white lady. There's no way this white lady's a felon. They don't even look at that part, right? But they saw it. They have good attention to detail.
Yeah.
That's important in payroll. But I'd been a personal banker prior to working in telecom, so I definitely was qualified for this job. That's why they called me for an interview. They asked me about the circumstances. I explained it. They offered me the job in writing, I quit my not that great of a job to start my new one with a few days in between. So I just had some time off. And the day before I was supposed to start that job, they rescinded my job offer. And they said they said their headquarters in New York won't let them hire me because I have a felony for escape, which is not related to processing payroll at all. And I knew that was discriminatory because I read and learned about the Wisconsin Fair Employment Law while I was in jail.
Yeah.
But I'm like, now I don't have a way to pay rent. I quit my previous job to take this one, with the start date and a letter,
So let me ask you. So I got to hear this again. You went and you interviewed.
Yeah.
All right. They offer you a job. Walk me through that one more time. I got to hear this again.
Yeah. They offered me the job in writing with a start date. So I quit my other job to take this better one. And the day before I was supposed to start, sorry, our headquarters in New York said we can't hire you because of your felony. And I was like, that doesn't have anything to do with processing payroll.
Wow.
And I was devastated. And I found out a few months later that I could file a complaint and get my job. I knew I could file a complaint,
right?
But I'm like, I don't have time. I got to scramble and find another job again. So I did file a complaint, and guess what? I started working there, and I worked there for 2 years. But I use that story a lot because I've worked in job service, and I ran across a lot of people at the job center that are like, oh, I can't go work for this good state government job or whatever kind of place because I have a background. I was like, so do I. I have a felony, and I work for the state. I worked for the state of California government. I worked for the state of Wisconsin. I was a federal contractor for the IRS with an extensive background check. I did tech support for Google Nest, all after my felony conviction. So I think people need to know what their rights are. They need to know that they still have options. And I ran across a lot of things that would come up and prevent me from pursuing what I wanted to in life because of my felony. So jobs that were denied, discriminatory because of it, housing. When I got that first job right away out of jail that didn't pay all that well, my kids qualified for a scholarship for the YMCA in Waukesha, and they denied it because of my felony.
Because of your felony.
And I'm not even applying. That's just for my kids to go there after school. And it said nowhere in there about they must have just CCAP'd my name or something, right? I'm like, okay, I guess I'll pay. Going to college, a college I couldn't attend because of my felony. And I'm like, there's not even a victim in my case. You know what I mean? Like I walked out of Huber. It's not even a real escape. But that's what really drove me to want to seek a pardon, because I'm like, look at all these things I've had to overcome for all these years, all these roadblocks over and over. And really, maybe this is controversial. Why do we even need a pardon? How about when we do our time, it's over? Stop punishing us.
Well, we're doing some things here. There's some of the things we've been having, me and Cam Beats, along with others, been really talking about how the Pardon Me brand can really start to help with advocacy around this idea that not only when your time is done, like you're done, but also you have individuals who are getting out in their own extensive supervision for like the next 20 years.
Yeah.
Well, they're not going to qualify for a pardon, but they're doing extraordinary work 2 or 3 years after they've gotten out. And there needs to be some kind of, we need to have some type of system in place. I know it can't be perfect, right? I think I said last week on the show, we had somebody from the Pardon Advisory Board I interviewed on the show. If you make it crisp, there's always people on the cusp. And that's where it gets challenging, because you have to have some of that gray area. But I agree with you. Like, somebody do their time. There should be some way, some extraordinary relief. And I know they call the pardon extraordinary relief, but in your case, there should have been some extraordinary relief to like be able to move you past that concept. And that, so leading into that, like thinking about going into your pardon, take me through that process. Like, what made you finally say, all right, I'm filing this paperwork? And what were you thinking when you were filling out that paperwork?
Well, I lived in California. I moved out there for a few years, and I was like,
some would ask,
"Mm,
why did you come back here and you were in California? I'm not asking for you to answer, but I'm just saying some people would ask that.
why?" Obviously, I love the weather in Wisconsin. No,
I'm
I
sorry, I
was
didn't mean to
homesick.
derail you on that.
I
on
was
your question.
homesick after 6 months, and I stayed out there for 6 years.
Wow.
What brought me back was the pandemic. I'm like, oh, okay, global pandemic. I'm going home now. But I wanted to study law out there. That's actually
Okay.
why I moved out there.
Mhm.
But I saw Tony Evers got elected, right, as governor. And I was so happy because I had worked at Department of Public Instruction when he was the secretary there. And I'm like, yay, Tony Evers.
Yeah.
And then I saw he formed a pardon advisory board. And I was like, yay, I'm going to put all my stuff together and get reference letters,
Mhm.
right? And get all my paperwork and my court case, copies and all that. And I was excited to put my application in, and it's a long process. You
It's
got
a
to
very
wait a
long
little over a
process, yes.
year. Now
Yes.
they fast tracked it. So a case like mine now, if someone applies,
Yeah,
they don't have to go in front of the board.
I was gonna say if it now a case like yours definitely would be like we always bring up one of the guests that came on, and he got fast track, and Tommy always like how like
How did he got
how.
that? There was absolutely no reason why he couldn't fast track. Like, dude,
And he even said it too. He was like, he was confused like that he got fast tracked. But a case like yours definitely would be like, oh, this is no reason to even have this conversation.
Yeah.
So you went through, all right, so you filled out the paperwork, you scheduled, you waited. It's about 14 months, 13 to 14 months. You waited, you sat in front of the what I call the Hollywood Squares, right? I'm assuming you did it online because it was during the pandemic.
Yeah.
So you sit in front of what I call the Hollywood Squares of the individuals who are on the pardon advisory board. What was going through your mind at that point? Like, what were you thinking? Because I want to put the viewers in the mindset that of where you were at, knowing that what you did was not so severe that should have been a felony, but at the same time, knowing that you did do something to earn a felony by escaping. So what was going through your mind at that time as you were talking about why you wanted a pardon?
Well, I was hoping I wouldn't ramble. So I did. I had about a month notice before my hearing. And they have a YouTube page, right?
They do.
So
They do.
I watched a few of the hearings to get a good idea of what to expect. And they said we have about 10 to 15 minutes. So I rehearsed my prepared, statement a lot. And for some reason, my camera wasn't working that day. And I thought, well, maybe it's blacked out because they're going to show my picture somehow when it's my
you
turn.
didn't know it was working.
No, I was hoping that's what the problem was. But so they were able to see me. But I think it was better because I may have been distracted, like looking at myself
seeing yourself
during
on
it.
there.
Yeah. So I was a little nervous, but I've been a legal advocate. I've sat on the board of directors of a legal organization. And I've given presentations and things and worked with attorneys. So I really wasn't that nervous, but still, like, that's a lot on your shoulders to be carrying around. I'm more proud of my pardon than my college degree,
That's dope.
and it took longer to get.
Right. And it costs a lot more than that college degree.
Nothing costs more than freedom.
I'm telling you.
That's the highest cost.
I'm telling you.
But yeah, I was a little nervous, but also relieved, like, wow, it's finally happening,
So when did anybody from the pardon advisory board, did they ask you any questions?
Yeah.
Oh, they did. They hit you with questions.
Yeah.
Come on, and this.
I had a very thorough, thick application.
That's what I'm saying. Like, and so did I. That's why. And they didn't have any questions for me. But it was interesting because just like you, I was working in state government. So when I applied, I was a career executive.
Mm-hmm.
So I was. I don't know if I was a section chief at the time. Yeah, no, I would have been state director at the time that I applied. And yeah, mine was very thorough as well. They had no questions for me, which actually made me very nervous. I was like, they had no questions, like what I did, the crime, like nothing. So what kind? Do you remember the question they asked you?
Yeah, it was. I think it was the retired sheriff or something.
Was it Noble from Madison?
From Madison.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I see here, and you disclose it on your application too. But I see here, what was going on with these restraining orders, and I've been a victim too. I've had to give restraining orders. How is all that been resolved or has it? And I was like, well, and then I did ramble because I didn't have a script for that.
Well, what
I
had
didn't
happened
practice.
was
Right.
right. You weren't ready for that. Yeah.
But at the end, I finally did answer it. So I'll shorten it. But my answer was, you know what? I was young. I was in my 20s then. And I was not a good judge of character, which is true. This all stemmed from a very bad divorce. I was like, I told them, you can look on the court record events for my family court case, over 200 events. We were always going back and forth to court.
200?
Even after the divorce. I did not exaggerate that number.
Jeez.
200. Double the time I spent jail. Yeah. But yeah, I was like, oh, I hope I did okay, right?
Right.
And then my dad told me that he was watching it and he thought I did good.
Oh, that's dope.
And then I was like, oh, I can rewind it already, like the same day. And I was able to rewatch it. And I was like, okay, yeah, I finally answered
You felt
it.
good about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was like, I think I have a good shot. And then you're waiting for a month, which is like the longest month ever.
Yes, it is. I actually waited 2 months.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so they're so far behind because so many people, because they institute the partner advisory board. I mean, he's done. I think it's over 1,000.
It is over.
It's like I think if somebody, I think Anthony, who was on the show, the last show, said it was like 1,400. Like that's awesome. I love it. But for those that are applying for pardons, it backs the system up because it's a process. But mine was 2 months.
I'm trying to figure out what the source of his rationale for asking that question. What did that?
I don't know.
Just curious. Just trying to be nosy.
Yeah, why are y'all up in my business?
Right.
I don't know you like that.
Right.
Why are you asking me
Is that resolved?
Who are
So,
you?
Like, hey, I'm good. I'm here. Like, what the hell?
I think, he probably being I think he was the former police chief in Madison.
Yeah.
So it probably stemmed from the fact that typically when there's restraining orders, there's a lot of domestic issues. Like many times it just doesn't get resolved.
I guess if there's 200 of them, he's like, all right, so that's a lot. So
yeah.
What's
If
going to
they
keep it from being
review-
202?
Exactly. If they reviewed it, if they went back, because they do a thorough review too. They just don't like look up and be like, all right, here you go. But I always say this. I say every time we talk about this, shout out to the Wisconsin Pardon Advisory Board, because they look for reasons to say yes. They don't look for reasons to say no. And it's witnessed by the individuals that they're pardoning and giving the opportunity for. So you got your pardon. So you got the next thing. So the picture you sent me when you got your pardon proclamation in the mail, tell me about that. You sent me the picture that you got it, like you got it in the mail. Walk us through that process.
Well, I had moved back to Wisconsin already, and I have a P.O. box, and I would check it in the morning before I go for my walk by the lakefront. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's finally here. I knew I got approved, right? But I didn't know how long it would take to receive in the mail. And because I checked the mail right before I go for a walk, I opened the envelope when I got to the lakefront, and I took it out and I took it for a walk with me. So yeah, the picture I sent is me holding it right with the Lake Michigan right in the background.
I was gonna say that because right before we got on air, I snickered at opening it up. I was like, oh, I can see like the art museum and
the Milwaukee skyline,
right? And whatever the first Wisconsin building's called now. What is it called? Like U.S. Baird, the Baird building, whatever.
It's still U.S. Bank on 3 sides. It's just Baird on one side.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
the north side.
Now I'm gonna look at it now.
It's just one side. I live right over by there.
That's funny.
The more you know.
Right. So rewind back. You have it in your hand. How did you get notified that you were pardoned? Was it a phone call or
an email?
An email. Okay.
Yep. So check your email.
Right.
Check your email. That's how they confirm if you're available for the hearing date that they, are proposing. And they send you a list of questions that they might ask or that they want you to at least talk about during your 10 to 15 minute spiel. And that's how you find out if you're approved or not.
Gotcha. And then when you got the email, who was the first person you spoke to?
My daughter. I was with her at the time.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. And I was like, I started crying.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's a time she won't forget. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What was the feeling like? Like when you open that paper, like when you got the email and you open the paper, like the email came obviously before the paper comes, right?
Right.
But the email comes and it's like it's like, oh, this is great. Like it it feels surreal.
Yeah.
But I felt when I actually opened it, that's when I felt like I was pardoned. Like, what did you feel when you finally opened it and Like what were the feelings that you were experiencing at the time?
It's I think there is a difference when you have something actually tangible,
Yes.
right? And you have
Yes.
the pretty gold seal and the
Yes.
I'm pretty sure it's a unique signature. It looked like it, like a marker, because on the back, I'm like, I think the governor actually
He
signed this in
literally
real
signed it.
life.
He wasn't a
Yeah. And I felt like a boulder was lifted off of my shoulders.
Yeah.
But I should mention this. So I recently, like, I left state service for a little bit and I went back just recently, a couple weeks ago. I work in equal rights.
Okay.
So I actually help look over like some of the complaints and things that come through for discrimination, including arrest or conviction record. But I had to go through the background check process again, right? And of course, I disclosed my felony. And the
Even though you
background
don't have
check
to.
company, you still have to disclose because you still were convicted.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I ain't disclosing
Yeah.
anything. So.
And I did, and I already worked for the state
Right.
before my, pardon. So it didn't matter. And I knew it didn't matter. But their background check company sent back the results and didn't say anything about my pardon. Oh, I wrote back. I was like, you better update that.
Are you serious?
I am serious. I disputed it. They still were like, we didn't report anything wrong. I was like, you didn't report thoroughly. And then I called and left a message. They're like, actually, we use this other company too. Like, it's totally not the state. It's this company that does background checks nationally. And I was like, I literally copied and pasted it from the court record. I linked the case. And I was like, you better reflect that I have a pardon.
Yeah.
You better.
Right.
And then I had to call this other random place that they're trying to blame. And I left them a voicemail and I said, I will sue you. And they called me like a week later and they're like, oh, we'll send an update. I was like, yeah.
That's
Still.
like the opportunity there for you to be discriminated against still existed, and it had nothing, like you did everything you're supposed to do, and it's like that's messed up, right?
2 years later.
Yeah,
it's
that's
almost 2-year anniversary since I got my pardon.
Yeah, that's messed up. I'm thankful that nothing. I'm thankful that they didn't judge you off that, or that they didn't look at them like, oh, well, we're going to take this offer and go somewhere else. But shout out, there's some states out there right now that are removing those. There's a lot of businesses that are basically banning the box.
Mm-hmm.
But you think about it, and I work for an organization, right, Jobs for the Future, where they asked me. We were at a staff meeting. I started in October. We did all staff in December. This is 2021, and one of the VPs asked, like, are you comfortable talking about, the fact that you've been in prison? Like, we were just talking, right, it was a social hour. And I was like, well, yeah, y'all check my background. She was like, no, we don't do background checks.
Oh.
And that was the first time I experienced an employer who didn't do a background check. And I was like, wow. Like, to be honest with you, it didn't feel as good as when I got a pardon, but it felt great. Mm-hmm. Like, I can compare both of those. Like, you all didn't check. Like, you don't care. Because that's really what it should get down to, is we don't care that you've been like,
what are you doing now?
Yeah, what
right.
are you doing now, right? Not what you're doing 25 years ago, or why did you escape from Uber? It shouldn't matter. It's about who you are now and the skills that you have now. Mm-hmm. So I agree with you. It's like a boulder lift off your shoulder. Like it is. It was a weight lifted off of my shoulder. Mm-hmm. That it wasn't stopping me. My conviction wasn't stopping me from moving forward in life. But mentally and I felt it. It was there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as we close out, because we have a couple minutes left, looking back, what do you think was the most important lesson that you learned throughout this experience? Negative and positive.
Aside from don't hide in the shower.
Yeah, right. They'll pull the curtain and look with a gun. Really just all the problems that we have in our criminal justice system in this country. Mm-hmm. I've given speeches too about this, but we're number one in incarceration rates in the world. Whether you look at it per capita, no, just the United States.
Okay, I was going to say.
But yeah, if you look at it per capita or just actual people behind bars, it doesn't matter. And it's very costly. The DOC, like I'll pull stats because I work as a reentry support partner, helping people coming out now with My Way Out. If you want help, go to thewayOuthelps.com.
There we go. Plug it.
Shout out to Ruben. Great work. Great work being done over there. My Way Out.
Yep. but just really empathizing with people. I mean, like I said, I grew up in the inner city, so obviously we know there's problems
Yes.
with the criminal justice system, but I had no idea to what extent until I went through it. So not judging people based on their past and really giving inspiration. Like, do you know your rights? That's literally the first thing I talk to people about. Do you even know what your rights are with employment or housing? Or did you know you could still go to college? Do you know if your rights are violated, what your recourse is? You know, I've been a legal advocate too, just because of my experience. So that's what, I use that experience to try to help other people so they don't have to have such a hard time when they're coming out.
And in the vein of that, you love helping people, and you talked about that in the beginning, and you talked about that before we went on air. What advice do you have to someone who may listen to this while they're incarcerated or after they've gotten out, no matter how much time? What advice do you have for an individual that's currently like fighting through that process? Like what if somebody was sitting in front of you right now, what would you tell them as they're fighting through this?
Just look for resources, look for partnerships, build up your network, find a mentor, right? There are a lot of re-entry organizations, but know that your past does not define your future. It doesn't. You can still do whatever you want. I have one degree, my associates. I'm working on my bachelor's and I'm in my 40s. It's been very part-time, but don't give up.
You got time.
Yeah.
Yeah, time, definitely. Well, we always close out the show. We start the show by reading the beginning of the pardon proclamation, and then Cam Beats gets to act as pseudo Governor Evers and reads the end of the proclamation. So I'll turn it over to Cam Beats.
All right. So the closing of the pardon states, "Now, therefore, I, Tony Evers, Governor of the state of Wisconsin, by the authority vested in me by Article 5, Section 6 of the Wisconsin Constitution, do fully and unconditionally pardon Crystal H. Keller of the offenses described above and restore to her all the rights and privileges which may have been forfeited by her as a result of said offense." And how does it sound?
It's got a nice little ring to it.
Little ring to
Yeah.
it. Dude, your story is really amazing. So appreciate you coming and being open and willing to share.
Yeah, I definitely feel like we could have talked for a whole lot longer
Mhm.
about the things in your life, and I appreciate you being vulnerable and candid. And I think that's the stories we want to tell. We want people to hear that. We want people to know that we're human beings. We're just because we commit a crime does not change the feelings that we have or the fact that we're human beings. And I can't thank you enough. The listeners may not know, and I don't even know if Cam Beast know. Like, I met Crystal on LinkedIn. Crystal hit me up on LinkedIn. I think I posted something, and she hit me up on LinkedIn, and we had this whole conversation. I'm like, you need to come on the show. Like, we'll get you on the show, and that's what led to, like, all right, let's make this happen and let's get you on the show.
That's
so
amazing. Yeah.
it is, and I think for me, I'm appreciative. So thank you very much for coming out. And
and thank you for the work that you're doing as you're out too.
Yes.
Like as you have come to and being an advocate and being someone who would be the voice of people. The voice of the voiceless. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And thanks for not giving up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you easily could have given up and just said, screw this, I'm done. And when your life was going down, when everything was spiraling out, you could have easily that was it, you were done. But you didn't. You kept pushing forward, and I thank you. And as being a veteran of state government, like, I thank you for going in and knowing that when you work for the state, you're a servant, right? You literally are a public servant of you want to help people and you want to see people in better positions. So thank you very much for that. And I wish you nothing but the best as you continue on in your career, whether it's with Equal Rights or anywhere else that you're at.
Thank you for having me.
So what we heard today from Crystal was one of the millions of stories that are out there of individuals who struggle prior to receiving a pardon. They struggle after incarceration because the system isn't always built to help support them once they're released from prison. We have to get back to this country. We have to get back to normalizing individuals, that their feelings and the things that they do, that they are human beings. So we want to again thank Crystal for her opportunity to come on to the Pardon Me podcast and share her story, being vulnerable and candid about her story. And we invite you, those listeners out there who want to come in and share your story with me and Cam Beats. We invite you to reach out to us at pardonme22.com. We'd love to hear your story. We'd love to have you on the show. Until next time, remember, failure is never an option. For more information about specific pardon requirements and eligibility in your state, visit pardonme22.com and search under the Pardon Resources tab.
The mission of Pardon Me is to inform, motivate, and most importantly, humanize individuals who have made mistakes but have received gubernatorial and presidential pardons. Pardon Me is a brand for those who support second chances.